Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. I welcome you to the 32nd lecture of the course Management, Organizational Policies and Practices. Let's start with the importance of the safety policy and the safety laws and regulations in Pakistan that we discussed. The different occupational safety laws, the responsibilities and rights of the employers and employees, which we all these aspects that we covered during our lecture on the safety and health, so which constituted the 20th lecture for this course. We discussed that there are a number of causes of the safety safety related accidents, right, or the hazards, the different hazards. There are a number of causes. So first, if we talk about the safety hazards or the causes of the accidents at the workplace, we saw that there are certain conditions that are beyond the reach of the management. There are certain conditions which are beyond management control, such as the catastrophes or the other calamities, natural calamities. They are wherein management cannot do anything. So they are the chance occurrences, and therein we do not have much to do as managers. But for the unsafe conditions and for the other factors such as the unsafe acts, the management is responsible, and if any accident occurs or takes place in the organization on the account of the occupational injuries or on account of occupational safety laws, then the management or the organization becomes responsible for that accident, and it can go into the lawsuits, right, and it can have to face heavy penalties, it can have to pay heavy insurance charges and other insurance claims, and it can also have to pay the other relevant compensation costs to the employees with whom the accident occurred, right? So it has to prevent its case in both the conditions, whether it is the unsafe conditions or whether it is the unsafe acts. Then basically it is important for you to understand the difference between the unsafe conditions and the unsafe acts. We discussed that the unsafe conditions, they are occurring or they are coming from the organization, and the management is directly responsible for the unsafe conditions, such as if there is if the procedures they are really hazardous, or if the machinery is faulty, there is some defect in the machinery and that is not corrected. If there is some default in the machinery, that should be corrected soon, that should be fixed immediately, and there are too high or too low temperatures, right? If there are no safety no safety icons have been displayed, or no safety measures are put in place in the organization, right, and employees, they are not given the safety trainings, they are not made familiar with what are the risks in the different areas, and with respect to the different jobs, then the management needs to have this awareness, and they need to give this awareness to the individuals, to the employees, that the different jobs, and according to the nature of the job, the safety or the health concerns, they are different, and the accidents, the nature of the accidents can be different in the different jobs, and then there need to be different safety measures for the different jobs, and there need to be different safety trainings for the different jobs as per the job requirements and as per the hazards that are posed in that job. So any conditions such as that are unsafe, right, such as there is no proper ventilation, so that is an unsafe condition, right, and any such conditions that are unsafe, they are the responsibility of the manager to provide the safe conditions work conditions to the employees, and it is the right of the employer to get the instructions from the government and other regulatory bodies on how to encourage this safety at the workplace and how to enhance the safety at the workplace. And it is the responsibility of the employees as well to inform the employers of any unsafe conditions in the organization. So if there is a defect in some machinery, if some defect is arising, or there is if the employee observes some defect, he should immediately report it to the manager or to the employer, right, so that it can be rectified before any losses occur. So that is the responsibility of the employees, and the rights of the employees is, of course, to have an access to safe workplace. Then there are unsafe acts that also cause the accidents at the workplace. So the unsafe acts are on the part of the individuals, on the part of the employees. Sometimes the organizations, they have this safety policy manual, right? They have the instructions to the employees that what are the safe acts and what are not safe acts. What is how they need to wear certain safety equipment, such as the gloves, etc., glasses, or the gloves, etc., or the head caps, etc., to secure themselves from the rays, or from the ultraviolet rays, or from the other kind of lights that can damage their eyes, right? And so it is the responsibility of the individuals to use that equipment, that safety equipment. But what is important here, in order for the individuals to make use that safety equipment, it is also important for the employer to recognize that that safety equipment should be wearable. It should not be difficult to wear, because the employee has to work with that equipment, and that equipment should be comfortable to wear with, because if that won't be comfortable and that won't be wearable, then the chances are that the employees, they won't wear that equipment, and there are chances of accidents will be increased, right? So the wearability of that those equipment is really important, and the employer should ensure the wearability of that equipment. The washing of the equipment and the wearing of that equipment, changing of the those safety equipments from one to another with the change of the job, and all these processes, the managers they should be in the eye of the managers, and the managers should try to find out that if the proper safety equipments are in place, and still the employees, or some of the employees, are not wearing those safety equipments, what are the reasons for them not to wearing these safety equipments. If the reasons are only behavioral, that the individuals, they just don't feel comfortable, that they just don't want to. Some individuals are more risk taking, and they don't give weightage or importance to this kind of things, and so it means that such individuals, they need behavioral modifications. In that case, the different behaviors, what are the causes of those behaviors, the managers, they need to identify, and then they need to modify those behaviors. Then one way of modification of the behavior is by way of training. Train the employees, tell them the importance of wearing the safety equipment, tell them the importance of acting safe, playing safe, right, and tell them the consequences of not playing safe, how damage it can cause for them as well as to their organization for not acting safe, right? Then that top management commitment itself is really important. The managers, they themselves, on the one hand, should use the safety procedures, the safety equipment, and on the other hand, they should keep a constant check on the employees. They should keep continuous audits of the workplace, of the different areas in the workplace, to see if there are any unsafe conditions or not, to see if there are any unsafe acts that the employees are engaged in or not, and to make sure that if there are any discrepancies, then they can correct that behavior, or they can correct that situation, right? So the top management commitment is really important. Then of course there are role models for the employee, and they should serve as role models for their employees. And if they will themselves, what they will do, the employees will be inspired and motivated to do the same. through selection and placement also, these unsafe acts, they can be reduced, right? Because as I told you that there are some individuals, they have their personality is such that they're more risk taking, they're more aggressive, and the individuals who are more aggressive, they also tend to be more risk taking, and they also tend to not follow this kind of safety procedures and the safety equipment, etc. Therefore you need to know what is the nature of the job, how sensitive the job is, and then what is the nature of the individual. Some individuals are more volatile, they're more therefore you need to see that whether the job is matching, there is a match between the job and the person, and that can be seen and that can be ensured in the selection and the placement process. And that if the jobs are very sensitive, and then what type of individuals should be placed in those jobs, and what type of other individuals should be placed in the other jobs. Then through training and through motivation, we discussed that the individuals they can act more safe. Then safety and health audits can also help. Then we discussed a number of workplace health hazards, such as the workplace substance abuse, that how it is a hazard at the workplace when the employees they start doing the substance abuse. One way is that at the time of the selection, you do these examinations and the medical tests of the prospective employees, if they are into the substance abuse or not, and if they are, then you can just screen them out, and if they are not and they do start doing this substance abuse, after that then you need to counsel them, then you need to give them warnings, and then you can even fire those employees, because the substance abuse, it is of course highly dangerous, and in terms of the individual's outcomes, it has a negative consequences on the productivity and the performance of the individual, and the lack of concentration, and the lack of more and more absenteeism on the part of the individuals. Then there are a number of infectious diseases as well. So if the individual has those is suffering from those infectious diseases, then the employer should ask the employee to take leave from office and stay at home till the time the individual recovers fully, because otherwise it's going to be caught by a number of other people as well, such as the spread of SARS epidemic. Then the stress, burnout and depression, that is another other health hazard, and that has again can have very significant consequences for the individual and the organization. There can be a number of causes of the stress, such as there are the individual factors, there are the personality factors that can cause the stressful situations, and some people, they are more prone to stress. They become very stressful, very anxious over a small, very trivial matter, and some individuals, they don't take stress even if something very big happens. Therefore it's all related to your personality, and it is related to your mindsets, and it is related to a number of there can be other emotional disturbances that the individual can have, but there can also be a number of organizational factors that can cause this stress, such as the workload and the deadlines, the work pressures, and the targets to meet your promotion case, etc. They can all contribute to the stress. That your relationship with the manager, relationships with the co-workers, they can contribute to your stress. And as a result of this stress, burnout and depression, what happens is that the individual again is reported to lose his concentration on the job, and to his performance and productivity declines, and his satisfaction with the job declines. The individual his turnover intentions increase, and his motivation to work falls, right, and he starts reporting sick, and he starts increasingly being absent, late from the workplace, delays in the work, getting angry or violent very quickly. So there can be a number of reactions of this stress, burnout and depression, which are bad for the individual and for the organization as well. Then there can be a number of computer related and health problems, such as if the computer is not, you have to sit really for long hours in front of the computer, and if the computer, it can cause the irritation in your eyes, it can cause hurting in your eyes, redness in your eyes, headaches, or a lot of concentration and doing your work and typing on your computer, that can also bring to you the headaches. Or it can, if you are not using the right posture, it can also bring in the backaches, right? So there can be a number of issues that can be related to this the use of the computer at the workplace, right? And how the managers, they need to tackle with that kind of issues at the workplace, because they can become the health hazards for the individual, such as the back problem. In a very significant portion of the people who sit in office from 9 to 5, they suffer from this back problem. So the managers and the organization should make sure that the chairs, they are comfortable, and the sitting posture of the individuals is comfortable. And it is good. There should be trainings on this as well. And other steps that the organizations can use, such as they can install, there are a few softwares that can be installed on the computer of the individual, in which after every 10 to 15 minutes the software pops up, and it starts small exercises that the individual can do. He can move his body parts so that they do not become stiff from sitting in the same posture for a long time. Right? And then of course the workplace smoking, that is not only bad for the active smoker but also for the passive smokers, and that is again a number of bad consequences for the individual and the organization, in terms of the increased heartbeat and the more chances of heart attack and other heart and lung diseases and breathing problems, right? And for the organization, again, the reduced productivity and the reduced outcomes. And organization again can have a safe no smoking policy, or it can even introduce the smoking rooms, etc., for the smokers, fixing the areas wherein they can smoke. And then the violence at the workplace, that can also be a health hazard, right? We discussed what is leadership and what are the different theories of leadership. And we started off with the discussion from how we can distinguish between the leader and the manager, right? And we saw that it is not important that or it is not necessary that a good leader will be a manager as well, or a manager will be a leader, or a good manager will be a good leader as well. Right, so the management skills and the management functions and the management, the requirements for being a manager are different than for being a leader. A leader needs to be someone who has some vision and who can motivate the people to get the things done, while the manager and the leader does not need to have a formal hierarchy and a formal position or a formal power position in the organization to depict those leadership skills, while the manager, on the other hand, he has a particular power position, he has some certain authority in the organization, and he gets job done from others on the basis of that authority and the power position, right? So we discussed that there are a number of trait theories of leadership, and these trait theories, they establish the oldest trait theory was basically giving the almost 100 characteristics or 100 traits of the individuals that distinguished the leaders from the non-leaders. But then emerged this big 5 personality model, which gave the 5 personality characteristics that distinguish the leaders from the non-leaders, such as that the theory stated that the individuals who are highly extroverted and who are highly open to experience and who are really conscientious, they tend to be leaders, and they tend to have more leadership skills, and it found a strong correlation between these two, and the theory stated that these 3 personality traits, they are the most influential in determining the leadership of the individuals. Compared to the emotional the stability of the individual, that is not that, and after this big 5 personality theory, the emotional intelligence trait that was also introduced, and it was stated that the emotional intelligence, because it deals with the empathy that can also be an important trait, an important leadership trait for further studies to be carried out. And then we discussed a number of behavioral approaches to leadership, such as the Ohio State studies and the University of Michigan studies. So the previous theory, the trait theories, they dealt with the different traits that that certain individuals are born leaders, and some individuals, basing on their traits, they are not leaders, right? They are by birth not leaders. So this theory, the trait theory, stated that we cannot increase the number of leaders, we cannot form new leaders, we cannot train the leaders, but these are just the inborn skills, or they are just the trait characteristics, right, which are stable and which tend to be stable and they cannot be changed, right? So but unlike them, the behavioral approaches to leadership, these basically stated that that what are the different behaviors that depict the leaders, right? So it basically conducted this research on all the different leaders and tried to study what are the behaviors of the successful leaders, or what distinguishes between the effective and the non-effective leaders. So the trait theories, because basically only distinguish between between who can be leaders and who cannot be leaders. So that only talks about the emergence of leaders, but these behavioral approaches try to answer that whether that who are the effective leaders and how we can distinguish between the effective leaders and non-effective leaders on the basis of the behaviors of the individuals, right? And the Ohio State University study basically came up with and both these university studies, if we try to sum up, they came up with the two types of leaders. One, who show the behavior concern for people, who show concern for people who are people oriented or relationship oriented, and the other one is the production oriented, right? And the production oriented are the managers who basically, or they are the leaders who really focus on the contents and on the task and the accomplishment of the task, and giving deadlines and getting the task done. They are the people. They have this production oriented leadership style. And the other one, the other types of leaders are the ones who really focus or who really emphasize on the relationship building with their subordinates, right? And they try to build trust and integrity and the mutual interest and the good relationships with their subordinates, and they try to emphasize on the good relationship building with the subordinates, right? So they are relationship oriented. And the research, these researchers, they basically supported that the University of Michigan research supported that the relationship oriented leaders, they tend to their subordinates tend to report greater job satisfaction and greater commitment, while the Ohio State University studies, it reported that the production oriented leaders, they tend to gain better productivity from the employees but lower satisfaction and commitment from the employees. Then we studied this contingency theories of leadership, wherein we studied a number of different theories, such as the Fielder's contingency model. We discussed this cognitive resource theory. We discussed the Hersey and Blanchard's social leadership model, and we discussed the path goal theory. So all these theories, they basically discussed the different situational factors. So which was the contribution of these theories as well, that they brought into light different situational factors, that how those different situational factors, they bring in they influence the leader effectiveness and the leader behavior under different situations, right? Then we had a discussion on the inspirational approaches to leadership. We discussed this the transformational leaders, and we saw that how the transformational leaders are the ones who basically form the vision of the organization and create the organizational vision and the organizational mission, and they inspire and motivate the individuals. They serve themselves as role models to the individuals, and they motivate them to think out of the box and to own the vision of the organization, and to even bypass their own personal goals for the goals of the organization. And these transformational leaders, they are reported to be the most effective form of the leaders compared to the transactional leaders who are not that effective forms of the leaders, right? So if we talk about these transactional leaders, they are basically the laissez-faire leadership style. These transactional leaders, they can be on the 4 levels. One is that this laissez-faire leadership style, which is the completely free leadership style, in which there is no check and balance, there is no leadership, it's free leadership, right? And it is termed to be the most effective, most ineffective leadership style. Then we discuss this ethical leadership, which are the what characteristics of the leaders they make them ethical, how the leaders they can make the ethical decisions, and how they can not make the they can make the unethical decisions. For example, some leaders, such as the charismatic leaders, if we talk about them, so the charismatic leaders, they are basically the transformational leaders is a broader concept, and the transformational leaders also have the characteristic of the charismatic leaders, basically, right? And the charismatic leaders are the ones who basically challenge the status quo, they challenge the existing assumptions, they force the employees to get out of the box and bring in new ideas, challenge the existing ideas, challenge the existing positions and the existing ways of doing things, and bring in new ways of doing things, bring in more risk into the more innovation and more creativity into your problem solving and into your thinking and in your approach. And they basically again, through their own actions, they inspire the individuals to perform and think out of the box, right? So that is what the charismatic leaders they do. They again inculcate and create the vision in the individuals. And but the downside of the charismatic leadership that has been reported is that the charismatic leaders are basically the yes boss kind of leaders. They try to surround themselves with the subordinates who are really yes boss, right? Who do not say them no. So that can sometimes become unethical. And secondly, it has also been reported that these charismatic leaders, some of the charismatic leaders in the history, in the past, they have been reported to behave unethically, and they have been reported to use the organizational resources for personal uses as well. Right, so that was about the ethical leadership. And then we also discussed the online leadership, when the leaders they have to they have to provide these leadership skills online to the people in virtually, right? So the subordinates sitting in the different parts of the world, and the leader is leading them only virtually. Then we discussed the concept of the mentoring, that how mentoring is important in the organizations. We discussed the role and the functions of the mentor, that how he has to provide the career counseling as well as the psychological counseling, as well as to the mentee or to the protege. When he provides the career counseling or the career advice to the protege, they basically hold very regular meetings together, and during these are basically the kind of informal meetings, and these meetings, they are during these meetings, the protege openly discusses his job, the nature of his job, any problems that he is facing in his job, right? How he should solve the problems, how he should take the problems. If he has any problems with his supervisor, what he should do about that. If he's not meeting the targets, what he should do about that. How he can enhance his career prospects, and so on. So any problems, any difficulties that he's facing with respect to his career and with respect to his current job, that will be mentored by the mentor, right? The mentor will be using his personal experiences, the mentor will be using his say in the organization. Sometimes he can even, the mentor, because mentor is normally a senior person, right? And a person who is more job experience compared to the mentee, right? And normally the mentor is also at a higher level in the, or he's up the hierarchy compared to the mentee. He's not at the same level in the hierarchy as the mentee is, right? But that is not mandatory. the mentor then he can even introduce the mentee to the significant others in the organization, right? And then the mentor also provides the personal advice to the mentee. If the mentee has any psychological problems or if has any family issues, the mentee can discuss those family issues and the personal problems with the mentor, and mentor can deal or the mentor can help the employee or the mentee get out of those personal or the psychological troubles that is going through, right? So it is important for this mentoring relationship that there should be good compatibility between the mentor and the mentee, and there should be good relationship and between the mentor and the mentee. And for that, normally when the organizations they assign these mentors, they try to bring these pairs of the mentor and the mentee. Normally the people who are who have performed the similar jobs as the prospective mentee has, and the people who are from the same sex or the people who are from the same background, they are formed pairs of, right? So because the females, for example, they generally feel more comfortable and they believe that, they perceive that the other senior female in their organization can understand better her problems and her situation compared to a male, right? So if a female is the mentees, they are normally asked for their preferences before allocation of the mentors, right? So if the mentee feels if the females, when they are asked, they normally give preference of the female mentors and not the male mentors, because they believe that the female mentors will be more will understand their problems more, and they can get better advice from the female mentees, because the female mentee, who is generally up the ladder in the organizational hierarchy, they perceive that they can benefit from how their mentor reached there, right? So these were a few tips on this mentoring. Then we discussed the power. What is power? What is the difference between the leadership and power? We discussed the basis of power, and we saw that how there is this legitimate power, how there is this we discussed the legitimate power, which is the authority which has been given by the organization to follow certain rules and regulations and get certain things done from the subordinates by following them. And then there is this coercive power, which is the power of the leader to punish the individuals if he does not perform according to the orders of the leader. Then there is this reward power, in which the leader has again the authority to reward the employee for performing the desired actions or for doing the desired tasks. Right, and then we also discussed that there are some there is expert power as well, and there is referent power as well. The expert power is that if you are really expert on your subject, on your area, or if you're subject in you're expert in your job, then the people perceive you as powerful, because they perceive that you have a lot of knowledge and on the area, and they can benefit from you, or you have you're powerful because you have the expertise to do a particular job, and you have the skills or the information or the knowledge to do a particular job. So that is the expert power. And the referent power is that the individuals, if they like something about you, some personality trait of yours or some behavior or attitude of yours, and they start attaching the power to you on the basis of certain behavior of yours, such as the actors or the models, when they come into the advertisements, if they come into the advertisement of a particular toothpaste, if your favorite actor comes, and you all of a sudden your views about that toothpaste change, and you want to use that toothpaste because you want to identify with that referent, right, who is that actor in this case. So that is the referent power, right? So we also discussed that for powerful, you need to be you need to have others' dependence on you, right? So if the others, they are not dependent on you, then you don't have any power, right? So if, for example, if I have a colleague in the organization who is really expert in medicine, right, and or who is really expert in any other area, you can say in software or the IT, or who is really expert in architecture. So and I am from management, and now that person has expert power, right? He is really known in the field, but his field is really different, entirely different from my field, right? And I don't have any dependence on that individual, right? Although he has expert power, but I have no dependence on him, therefore he's not powerful for me, right? And similarly, if a person in another department who has really legitimate power, but I don't have any dependency on that individual, therefore he is not powerful for me, right? If he has the reward power, or if he has the coercive power, but he cannot exercise that power over me, and I don't have any dependency on that individual, therefore he is not powerful for me. So the dependency postulate says that if somebody is if an organization, for example, is really dependent on someone for a particular resource, then that resource will be powerful. But if you don't have dependency, or if that resource is easily available, right, then again that is not an important resource, and that resource will lose its value. So if for example in our department, if we have a marketing manager who is really expert in his job, we have two marketing managers who are really expert in their jobs, then of course our dependency on one manager, that won't be as much compared to if there was only one manager, right? So our dependency would be a lot. So now we have a substitute available for both of them. They are each other's substitute, right? And therefore their dependency has reduced, and they are not as powerful as they could be if there was only one, right? So it depends upon whether you have substitutes or not, and how much rare that power is that you have, right? If that power is commonly available, then of course you are not that powerful. Then we discussed a number of different power tactics that can be used by the managers to get the orders fulfilled, right? And such as we discussed by way of persuasion, in which and by way of the personal appeals, by way of forming coalitions, and by way of coercion, right, forcing them to do it, otherwise punishing them, by way of the rewards, right, and by way of the inspirational appeals. So these are a number of power tactics that can be used to get the work done, right? And we also discussed the factors that influence the choice and effectiveness of the power tactics. We saw that which power tactics they should be used, and when will be the effectiveness of which power tactics, right? And we saw that in our downward communication, how we need to use the different power tactics. In our lateral communication, we need to use the different power tactics, and in the horizontal communication, there are some other power tactics might be more helpful. And we also saw that how a combination of those power tactics that can sometimes be helpful than using a single power tactic, or how the soft power tactics, they can be more effective than the hard power tactics, such as the coercion, etc. Or the pressures. Then we saw that how the organizations, there are certain individuals in the organizations, they engage into this political behavior, and because they want to gain the access to the organizational resources and more favorable balance of the more favorable distribution of the organizational resources. And there particularly we saw that there are a number of determinants of this political behavior, in which there are the individual factors again, such as the type of the personality the individual has. There are a number of personality factors that influence the political behavior of the individuals. Then we discussed that there are also a number of organizational factors that determine the political behavior of the individuals, such as if the situation is there is role ambiguity, there is uncertainty, the situation is not clear, and then the individuals who are really political, they try to manipulate the situations and they try to take benefit of that ambiguity, and by playing political they try to get more favorable outcomes for themselves, right? And then if there has to be reallocation of resources, how the individuals they try to be more as a result, because of the reallocation of the resources, the individuals they want to have more favorable distribution of resources again, and they try to play political when the individuals believe that there is that there is going to be a zero-sum game in which one individual will gain at the expense of the other. Then again there will be more tendency that they will be entering into these political behaviors. So there are a number of determinants of the political behavior, and the influences of the political behavior. So the individuals, some of the individuals who do not play politics, how these political behavior influences those individuals. They enter into these defensive strategies, and it can sometimes be really dissatisfying, demotivating for them, and it can be stressful for them, and it can enhance their intentions to quit as well. Then we discussed during our 23rd lecture that what is ethical behavior at work, and what we mean by ethics. What is the code of conduct to ensure that ethical behavior is being displayed at the workplace. Then we discussed the factors that shape the ethical behavior at work, and we discussed that there are a number of individual factors, how strong the individual himself is, what is his value system. And for some individuals, for example, one thing is corruption, and for another individual that same thing is not corruption. And even if some individual is engaged in heavy corruption, he may have a number of justifications for himself, and he might have convinced himself that he is not engaging in the corruption, right? So it all depends upon your personality or the personal factors. They are a big determinant of your ethical behavior, right? Your own value systems, right? And then of course your organization determines your ethical behavior at work. If in the organization there are more deadlines and more tough targets, then the individual is more likely to engage in unethical behavior. Then your supervisor that influences your ethical behavior at work, the targets that the supervisor gives you, and sometimes the supervisors, they even ask their employees to manipulate the data and bring into him the desired results, right? And supervisor can really encourage you, or he can really force you to play unethical. Then the co-workers, they also have the influence on the ethical behavior, especially when you are working in the teams. There are team norms, and certain team norms they promote certain kinds of behaviors, and recognize the team member if they is displaying good behavior, and they discourage him when they is not depicting the ethical or the right behavior, right? So the team norms and the team itself, and then the culture of the organization, that again is an important factor in determining the ethical behavior. If it is a strong culture and there's ethical culture, and the signals are coming from the organizational culture that this should be done and this should not be done, then that again determines the ethical behavior at work. We also saw different ways in which the management can influence the ethical behavior at work by providing the trainings, by committing themselves to this initiative and displaying the ethical behaviors themselves, by storytellings, by rituals, and by a number of other practices. The managers, they can enhance and they can promote the ethical behavior at work. Then we discussed these fair disciplinary practices that needs to be employed if the employee is entering into any misconduct. Then the organization should have this disciplinary process, how to discipline the employee if the employee is entered into the misconduct. So what would be the procedure? That should be the proper procedure should be in place, that how to discipline the employee, right? And we discussed a few important tips on how to discipline the employee. We saw that we need to see the nature of the misconduct. If the misconduct is small, then the penalties should also be small, and if the misconduct is large, then the penalty should also be large. Normally the minor penalties, they are suspending for a few days from the job, right, or a deduction of the salary from the job for a month, and these are the minor penalties. Whereas the terminating the employee or demoting the employee, these are the major penalties, right? So the major penalties should only be in the cases of the major misconduct, and then also we saw that how these penalties, there should be a progressive system of this disciplining the employee. First you need to, when an employee enters into the misconduct, first you should give the warning to the employee. First it should be an oral warning, then it should be a written letter. Then if the employee again enters into that misconduct or bad behavior, then that written letter that you have given to the employee, that should be put in the file of the employee. And then even if after some time the employee should be counseled, and he should be given another warning, and asked him that, and he might also in certain cases be advised to take a leave and do rest at home and then come back, and that might improve. But if after some time, if he again repeats the behavior, then that employee should be terminated. So there should be a progressive system of penalties. It's not that you are outrightly firing an employee on account of misconduct, but you first need to warn that employee, you need to counsel that employee, you need to give him some time to respond, you need to hear to him, you need to basically establish a disciplinary committee in your organization, which should be an unbiased committee who can hear such cases and make a decision on how to deal with such cases. And we discussed all these in detail. Then we discussed the important factors in managing the dismissals effectively, right? And we also discussed in here what is wrongful discharge. We also discussed in here what is termination at will, right? And we also discussed that how to manage dismissals, we also discussed how to deal with angry employees, how the organization should conduct the exit interviews, and what is the importance of those exit interviews. So these are the different areas which we discussed during this lecture. Then in our 24th lecture, we discussed the different strategies at the business unit level. And we started off with these Porter's strategy clock, which says that there are there are these two low-cost strategies, right? And which the one is the no-frill strategy, wherein there is the very low quality of the product and it is kept at very low price as well, right? And the the customers, they are very sensitive to the price, and they are paying for the value of the product or for the features of the product, and not for the outlook or the design or the features of the product, right? So only for the characteristics of the product. Then the second one that we is the low cost strategy, wherein the firm operates on the basis of the low cost, and it needs to maintain that low cost base. Then we discussed the differentiation strategies, and therein we had the one, the broad-based differentiation, wherein the quality of the product is a little higher and the price is also a little higher. And differentiation is made, the organization offers differentiated products from the customers, and that differentiation is should also be valued by the customers for the competitive advantage to be attained and retained. Then we discuss the differentiation strategies that are differentiation strategies which target the niche market. And we discuss the hybrid strategy, wherein both product is offered that is a relatively low, that is relatively good quality, which is like in the broad-based differentiation, and that is at a lower price, right? Then we also had a discussion on the different integration strategies that are used by the firm, such as the forward integration, wherein the company or the organization, it bypasses its distributors and starts doing that function itself, right? Such as I gave you the example of the car manufacturers who started doing the insurance as well, right? Or the car manufacturers doing the repair business, or doing the repairs of the cars, right? And that is forward integration. And then the backward integration is when the firms they start producing they basically bypass the suppliers, and they start producing the raw material, etc. themselves, right? So that situation can be when your suppliers, they are really expensive, they're costly, and they are basically exploiting you. They're not producing the goods of desired quality, and or the supplier has quit the business, or there can be a number of reasons why you are entering into backward integration. You just simply want to diversify, and you want to diversify your risk. That is why you are entering into that is also giving you more power over the raw materials when you start producing it yourself, right? And also reduces the cost that you have, additional cost that you are paying to the suppliers. And we also discussed the horizontal integration, which is when you collaborate with your competitors, right? Such as the creation of the cartels or creation of the monopoly-like situations, in which then you take advantage of the competition as a result of entering into this horizontal integration. Then we discussed a number of diversification strategies, and we saw that how the companies can enter into the related diversification, or they can enter into the unrelated diversification. And the related diversification has its benefits in the form, because it is based on the economies of scope, and the firms can reap synergies as a result of this related diversification. And the unrelated diversification, when the firms feel that their existing products, they have really matured, and they need to enter into new markets with new products, they need to expand, or they are doing really already really well in their existing markets, existing products, they have made their brand name, and then they enter into the unrelated diversification. But the firms, in both cases, they need to say that if they have the management skills and management team and the capabilities to enter into this diversification and to handle it. Then we saw these intensive strategies, that how the firms, they have this market development strategy or the product development strategy, and then product penetration and the consolidation strategies. These are all the intensive strategies that we discussed, and we saw that under what situations the firms adopt these different strategies, and what are the implications of all these different strategies, how the firm manages all these different strategies. Then we had a discussion on the different forces for change. We basically discussed that how the change is a challenge for the managers, and how the managers, they should manage the change. We saw that how the change, it can be both, there are a number of forces that we have many times discussed in the external environment. They impose a challenge for the organizations to change, and if the organization will not change in response to those forces, the organization is likely to die. Then we discussed this planned versus unplanned change, that sometimes the change is planned in the organization by the managers, that if we want to bring this change in our processes, if we want to consolidate, or if we want to establish a new manufacturing unit, then this is how we need to invest, this is how we need to finance our money from, and this is how we need to rotate our people, this is how we need to design our jobs. You need to look at all those different aspects, and that is the planned change. But a change is unplanned when, if all your employees, they all of a sudden come to your office and they say that they're going to strike tomorrow if their working conditions are not changed, or they're going to resign in a few days and going to go to some other company, etc. So then the manager, when he has to respond to this kind of initiatives of the employees, then that is an unplanned change. Then of course we saw that how the resistance to change that can be very strong in the organizations, and what are the consequences of that resistance to change. It has a it can have very serious consequences for the survival of the organizations, because sometimes the organization culture is so much developed and deep root and strong in the organizations that the employees, they become resistant to change. And not only the culture brings the structural inertia in the organization, but it also sometimes the employees or the individuals, they are so much habitual of doing their tasks in certain ways that they don't want to change them. That has become their habit. Sometimes they just have this fear of unknown, sometimes they feel insecure, they have this job insecurity, they have this insecurity that they may not be able to perform well in the new jobs, and as a result of change. So all these factors, they are the resistance to change factors, right, and they need to be overcome. So we discussed the two different approaches to managing this change. One was the Lewin's 3-step change model, and the other one was the Kotter's 8-step plan for implementing change. So the Kotter's 8-step is more or less the elaboration of those 3 steps that were given by Lewin's. Then we discussed the organizational development, that what are the different interventions that can be used for the development of the organization. Then we saw that how the culture for change can be created in the organization, and that can be by 2 ways. One, by the innovation, bring in the innovation in the organization, adopt the innovation strategy in the organization, and the innovation is likely to be more when there is going to be increased tenure of the managers in the organizations, then they are more likely to be in the positions to bring innovations in the organization. When the culture in the organization is flexible, it is more organic, then there are chances that there will be more innovations. There will be more innovation in the organization. And then we also discussed that how the learning organizations are the one that are continuously learning, and they're continuously adaptive, and they continuously assimilate, and they continuously gather new information, they disassemble that information, and they assimilate that information into their cultures. And they are the learning organizations, and how those learning organizations are important in dealing with the issues such as the strategic drift. Then we had a discussion about the organizational culture. We defined the organizational culture, and we saw that what are the different characteristics of different cultures in the organizations, such as the stable cultures, the risk-taking cultures, the innovative cultures, the people-oriented culture, and so on. Then we compared the functional and dysfunctional effects of the organizational culture on people and the organization. So sometimes the culture, it can really bring this resistance to change, which we were discussing earlier, and sometimes it can be really a barrier to the diversity, for example. And but the culture, on the other hand, itself can be a substitute for the formalization, right? It can really regulate the behavior of the individuals. So we discussed the different factors that create and sustain the organization's culture, and we discussed how the culture is transmitted to the employees in different stages, and we also try to relate the culture to the ethics and how ethical culture can be created in the organization, and we saw what the positive organizational culture is and how national culture may affect the way organizational culture is transported to a different country. And we discussed that how the national culture is supersedes the organizational culture. The national culture has strong imprints on the individual than the organizational culture has. Then we discussed the conflict that can arise in the organization when the two people and two managers, their tasks are interrelated, and how there can be different types of conflicts that can arise between them. We discussed the different views on the conflict, the traditional, the human relations, and the interactionist view of conflict, and we saw that how this interactionist view of conflict had divided the conflict between the task conflict, the relationship, and the process conflict. And we saw that interpersonal conflict or the relationship conflict is always dysfunctional, whereas the other two types of conflict are low levels of the other two types of the conflict that are good, and higher levels they are again dysfunctional. We saw that how we discussed the conflict process, how it arises, how it is perceived, how it is felt, and then how the intentions of the individuals develop and how their behavior is developed then is developed then as a result of those intentions, and what are the different conflict handling strategies that the different individuals they can use. Then we also saw what is negotiation and what is the distributive and the integrative bargaining, what are the different steps in the negotiation process, how the distributive bargaining can be successful, the tips towards the distributive bargaining, what are the different personality traits that who can be effective in the distributive bargaining, what are the different personality traits that can be effective in the integrative bargaining, and what are the tips and tricks to survive the integrative bargaining. And we saw that in the end the integrative bargaining is better over the distributive bargaining, because integrative bargaining leads to long-term relations compared to the distributive bargaining, which leads to the transactional and the short-term relations, right? And the integrative bargaining is, as a result of that, you can find collaborative solutions for which can be benefiting both the parties. You can come up with the solutions which are the win-win situations, win-win solutions, whereas in the distributive bargaining that is not the case. And we also saw the role and functions of the third party negotiations, and we also saw that how different cultures the negotiations and the negotiation process and the bargaining process is different in the different cultures. Then we analyzed the concept of the teams, the growing popularity of teams. We discussed that what is the differences between the groups and the teams, when teams should be formed and when teams should not be formed, what are the features and the characteristics of the effective teams, what are the different types of teams, such as we discussed the concept of the virtual teams, we discussed the problem solving teams, we discussed the self-managed teams, we discussed the cross-functional teams, and what are their characteristics, what distinguishes them, what are their positives and the strengths and the weaknesses, and how organizations they can create team players, how they can convert the individuals into the team players, and when the organizations need to make this decision, how they can make this decision, that whether they have to design the work around individuals or they have to design it around teams. So we discussed all these things in detail, and they're all important things to do. Then we saw our understanding of teams in different global contexts. Then we discussed the organizational structure. That is again a very important topic, wherein we saw that how the different organizations they can have different structures, and these structures they are basically coming from the strategy of the organization, and it depends upon if the organization has a low-cost strategy or it has a differentiation strategy, depending upon or it has an innovative strategy. Depending upon the strategy of the organization, it needs to make alignment in its culture, in its structure, right? So if an organization has really an innovative strategy, then it needs to have an organic structure. And if it has a low cost strategy, it needs to have a mechanistic structure, and we saw that there are a number of we discussed a number of different forms of organizational structures, such as the functional structure, the divisional structure, the SBU structure, and the matrix structure. We discussed their characteristics and the positives, the strengths and the weaknesses of these different forms of the organizational structure. And we discussed that it's not only the strategy that determines the organizational structure, but also the size of the organization determines its structure, the context where it is operating, and they are also important factors in determining the structure of the organization. And in the end, we saw the implications of this strategy, matching this strategy with structure of the organization, and we saw with the help of a diagram that how if there is a change in strategy takes place and a change in structure does not take place, then how it reduces the performance of the firm, and after the change in the structure, the performance of the firm that can be increased again, right? So there should be an alignment between the organizational strategy and the organizational structure. And we saw that how the division of work is done in the different forms of organizational structure, how the jobs are designed in different forms of organizational structure, right? And how the resource allocations are in different forms of organizational structure, how the decision making implications for decision makings, the slow versus fast decision making, the autonomy, discretion versus no autonomy and no discretion on the part of the people, consequences for the employee attitudes and satisfactions of the different structures, such as in the functional structure, people feel more monotonous and people feel lesser satisfied, whereas in the matrix structure, they feel more autonomous and they feel more satisfied because it is designed around teams. So you need to understand all these differences between these different forms of structure, their implications for the employee behaviors, their implications for the managers, right? So with this, we come to an end of today's lecture, as well as this was we know that this was the last lecture of this course as well. We have today we have covered our course on management policies and practices. I hope you enjoyed this course together with me. We really progressed in this course from day one till now. I hope that it was a good learning experience for you, and I wish you great success for this course and in every future endeavor of yours. I thank you very much for being with me throughout. I thank you very much for your patience throughout, and I thank you very much for your motivation to hear me throughout. Good luck. Allah Hafiz.